Europeans could soon lose their financial freedom. That's because the European Central Bank, or ECB, has been rushing to roll out its digital euro. More than 1,000 demonstrators marched through the streets of Amsterdam in early February. They directed their ire at something that does not even exist yet: the digital euro. They feared that it would be used to replace cash entirely, and the state would use it to track and control their spending. In this video, we will explore what the European Central Bank is and the pros and cons of it for humanity, and then you can decide whether this is a good thing or not. Before we continue, give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Let's continue. So why is this a concern for Europe? The EU don't want you to have any alternatives to the Central European Digital Bank currency because it gives them power. If you are in a relationship where someone else who controls your money, then you are in an abusive relationship. The EU say that they worry that Europe lacks its own payments champion, leaving it overly reliant on the likes of Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, or even Apple, which recently launched savings accounts and a credit card in partnership with Goldman Sachs. Their arguments for it are clear: it'll be quick, easy, and cheap to transact. There'll be no problems at all, no loose change lying around. So what do you think? Is it another way to control the people of Europe, or is the EU trying to make life easier for its members? Well, let's look at a real example of how this could play out. Do you remember the Canadian truckers? They were legally and lawfully going about their business driving trucks, but then legislation came in demanding that unless they've been double vaxxed, they couldn't continue doing long-distance lorry driving. So they protested, and in the end their bank accounts were closed down by the Canadian government. Well, with the central bank digital currency, anyone that decides to stand up and fight against the government could be pressed down simply with the push of a button. It gives the government total control over our lives. So what is the central bank digital currency?
The central bank digital currency is basically what we have now, so it's fiat currency, but it's going to be entirely digital, which means absolutely in the control of the government and the central bank. So as you mentioned, governments, since they own it, they're able to program it in a way that we've never seen before. So as you said, if for whatever reason you don't do as you're told and you don't take 3 vaccines, 4 vaccines, or whatever it is, the money can just be programmed to be used against you. The perfect example is right now, we're living during this supposed climate crisis where they want to implement a carbon allowance. So how do you do that? Well, it's very simple. You just program the money in a way that you cannot do with the current cash that we have. You program the money. So if, for example, you have a barbecue and you want to buy some steaks, some burgers, some sausages, whatever it is, you could actually reach your carbon allowance. So when you go to fill up your car, it could get declined because you reach your carbon allowance. So it's a really efficient way for governments to implement their political and woke agendas through the money.
And this is not just the EU.
Exactly. Currently, more than 90% of central banks globally are all working on bringing out a central bank digital currency.
In its recent progress report, the ECB shared more details about the features of this digital currency, stating the rollout date would be the 23rd of October this year. The digital euro scheme will require all businesses to accept the digital euro as a payment option. Additionally, businesses will need to have the capability to pay their employees using digital euros. However, putting control fears aside, let's talk about the US dollar, which accounted for a significant percentage of global reserves, which means currency. The US has the power. At the beginning of the century, the US dollar accounted for a significant percentage of global reserves. However, due to the increasing number of countries facing US sanctions, there is a growing trend of nations shifting their reserves away from the dollar. This raises concerns about the future relevance of the US dollar and its potential impact on the country. While it is unlikely that the dollar will become completely irrelevant, its significance may gradually diminish over time. This could push the US into a corner, motivating the government to take action to regain control. One proposal is the introduction of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which are claimed to benefit the unbanked population. As it stands, we are seeing the emergence of BRICS. BRICS is an acronym for the powerful grouping of the world's leading emerging market economies, namely Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The BRICS mechanism aims to promote peace, security, development, and cooperation. The BRICS plan to back their new currency with gold and other metals with intrinsic value. The BRICS plan to back their new currency with gold and other metals with intrinsic value. BRICS is another threat to the US dollar and its influence on the global markets, so maybe the ECB is just another way to claim the power back of its countries. The BRICS represents a counterbalance to the dominance of the traditional Western powers in the global economy and governance structures. This is important because it helps to promote a more multipolar and democratic world order, where the voices and interests of developing countries are better represented and reflected in global decision-making. BRICS is another threat to the US dollar and its influence on the global markets, so maybe the ECB is just another way to claim the power back of its countries. So what are your thoughts on the digital euro and BRICS in relation to the US dollar? Do you think this is a good thing or just another way for the government to control us? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you. See you next time.